Hi everyone, in this video we will be creating a profit and loss statement using Excel pivot tables. It is so easy and yet dynamic when you are comparing data from different cost centers and months, and we will use the slicers to do so. In addition, we will use conditional formatting to make it easier for the readers of the P&L to spot the variances in no time. I will be using this hypothetical data here. If you would like to follow along with me with the same data file, I will add a link below the video where you can subscribe to my email list, and I will send you a link to the file I'm using right here. Now let's get into it. In the data I'm using, I will assume that this is a consulting firm that provides financial consulting services. They provide audit, consulting services, tax services, and training. I corrected that in the file, it's only tax services. You will find data for the months May, June, and July. We need to prepare a simple P&L with revenue, cost of services, and expenses. And also we have different revenue and expense account that make up the income statement or the P&L. In addition, we have the actual figures and the budget figures. And we will need to get a variance, but we will do that later in the pivot table. Notice that our data is already in a tabular layout, so it can be used easily with pivot tables. If you want to know more about how to structure your data in a tabular layout and pivot tables, I have a 6-hour course that will explain in details all you need to know about pivot tables, how to structure your data to be used in a pivot table, and how to create a pivot table to help you analyze your data, and how to start creating your first dynamic dashboard using pivot tables. I also have a free 30-minute course to get you started with Excel tables. I will add all the links below the video, so check them out. Let's start by inserting a pivot table. I will add the pivot table on the existing sheet called P&L. If you don't have that sheet, you can create one, and I will add it here in cell B4. I will add the P&L groups and accounts here in the rows section. And the values of the actuals and the budget, I will add them in the values section. I can either click the box next to the field or drag and drop it in the desired section in the bottom right corner here. I will apply some number formatting. Click on any number and right-click to choose number formatting. I will format for currency with no decimal places. But you can choose the formatting you prefer, 1 decimal place, 2, or none. Feel free to rearrange the display of the P&L as you wish if you have more P&L groups than I do. I will drag the revenue to appear above the cost of services. To do that, I will hover the mouse until it displays the 4-headed arrow. Left-click the mouse and drag it to the desired place. You will see a green line that will guide you to where it will be dropped. By default, the pivot tables have grand totals, but we don't need one in this case, so I will delete it. I will right-click on the grand total and remove it. Normally in a profit and loss statement, we have subtotals for gross profit and net profit. To create these here, I will do that using calculated items. I'll be using the P&L group level to calculate the gross profit and net profit. So I need to click in either revenue, cost of service, or expense to be able to create a calculated item, as these are the fields I will use in my calculation. Then I will go to the pivot table analyze tab and click on fields, items, and sets. I will choose calculated item. In this pop-up, we need to fill the name and the formula for the calculated item. I will start with the gross profit, which is simply revenue minus the cost of service. I will double click on the item to choose it. So I will double click on revenue, type in minus, and then double click on cost of service. I can add here the second calculated item, the net profit, by clicking add, but let me first show you how the gross profit will look in the P&L. So I will click OK. You see here the gross profit have been added to the pivot table, but it has all these accounts. So I will collapse the accounts here as I don't want to show them in the P&L. I can now move the gross profit under the cost of service. Now let's add the net profit as our second calculated item. Repeat the same exact steps. And our formula here for net profit will be gross profit minus the expenses. Gross profit here is our previous calculated item. Now you see the net profit added to the pivot table. I will also collapse the accounts. In order to remove the collapse buttons, I can turn them on or off from this area in the upper right corner. I will also remove the row label header from the field header here. To remove the word sum of from the actual header here, I can go in the cell and delete it. But you will get an error message as this is one of the names of the fields in the pivot table and it cannot be used again. To overcome this, we can just add a space, either before the word actual or after it, to differentiate the label of the column from the actual field in the field list on the right side. And now Excel will accept it. I will do the same with budget header. I will add a space before the word budget. I will align the labels in the middle. As we can see here, the subtotal for each of the P&L group is on the top of the accounts. If you want to add the subtotal at the bottom, we can do that from the Design tab. Go to the subtotals and choose Show All Subtotals at bottom of group. The P&L now is starting to look how we want it to be, but a little bit cluttered. So I will add blank rows after each P&L group. From the Design tab, I will click blank rows and choose Insert blank line after each item. In most cases, we will need to update the figures that we have for any adjustments or for future months' data. So when we refresh our pivot table or our income statement in this case now, we don't want it to resize. To stop the pivot table from resizing, we right-click in the pivot table and go into the pivot table options. In the Layout and Format tab, we untick the auto fit column width on update to prevent it from resizing. You can also change the design of the pivot table to match the look of your P&L. In the Design tab, you can find different styles that you can pick from. Or you can customize your own by right-clicking on the design that is close to your own, then click Duplicate and create your own style. This is so easy. Choose the table element you want to change and click on Format to make the changes. Then you can save it to be used for other pivot tables that you create. You can also get rid of the lines on the sheet itself just to give it a more professional look. You will go to the page layout in the ribbon, then go to the sheet option section where you will find grid lines. You can tick off the box so you can't view the grid lines. You can do a little bit formatting to the top and bottom borders of the cells for the totals and subtotals to make them pop out. To do that, choose the cells that you want to format and click on the Home in the ribbon and choose from the drop down the border styles you prefer. There is no right or wrong about this, just choose whatever you prefer. Now we have our P&L comparing actual to budget. Whenever there is a comparison in the P&L, it's always good to show the variance in amounts and in percentages. We can do that here by adding a calculated field. Go to Pivot Table Analyze, click on Fields, Items and Sets, and click on Calculated Fields. Here we will need to insert a name for the calculated field as well as a formula to help the pivot table calculate it for us. I will call it variance, and the formula is simply actual minus budget. I will click on the Add to add another calculated field for the variance percentage. The formula divides the actual by the budget and then deduct 1. See how easy it is to generate calculated fields? And the best part is that this will be dynamic with the changes in the pivot table every time we hit refresh. I will adjust the labels here as we did before. We can right-click to format the percentages. I prefer a 0 decimal place, but as I said earlier, there is no right or wrong for this. Pick the number of decimal places that you prefer. Now we have our P&L with the variances and the percentages. We can still make it easier for the reader of the P&L to spot the positive and negative variances. We can do that using conditional formatting. It's a little bit tricky here when using the P&L, as the favorable variance in income are where actual figures are more than the budget, but the favorable variance in expenses are where the actual figures are less than the budget. In this case, we need to have two conditional formatting rules for these. The first conditional formatting will be for revenue, gross profit, and net profit. I will highlight all these cells, and in the Home tab, I will click Conditional Formatting, and in the drop-down menu, you can choose how you want to format the cells, and you can choose color scale, data bars, or icon sets. I will choose these arrows in the icon sets. I will also do the same for the cost of services and the expenses. I will highlight and use the same arrows in the icon sets. To make changes to the rules of the conditional formatting, we go back to the conditional formatting drop-down menu and choose Manage Rules, which is at the bottom. In the Applies To section here, on the right, you can check which rules applies to which group of cells. In this case here, the upper icon set rule applies to the cost of services and expenses. Double click or click on Edit Rule here to open the Edit Formatting Rule dialog box. To reverse the icon order, you need to click here on the Reverse Icon Order. You will notice the icons here are reversed. This means that a negative variance or actual less than budget is a good variance, as this is expenses. That's why we reverse the icon order. I will choose the type to be numbers, as the values are compared to 0. For the rule of the icon set for the revenue, I will keep it as it is, but will change the type to number as we are comparing the values to a 0. Click OK, and here you go. You have the conditional formatting for the variance percentage. So now, checking the P&L, we will see negative variance for revenue with a red arrow pointing downward, showing it is less than the budget, which is an unfavorable in this case. Now, on the expense side, you will find the negative variance with a green arrow pointing upward, showing that it is less than the budget, which is a favorable variance. I know it might be a little bit confusing. That's why the conditional formatting gives a very good visual image for favorable and unfavorable variances for the P&L readers. One last thing I would like to mention here before we end today's video is how to filter your data presented in the P&L. Most of the time, we would like to present the P&L for each month or for each cost center. We can do that here by adding slicers. Go to the Insert tab in the ribbon and click on Slicers. You will choose which slicer you want. I will choose the cost center and the month here and click OK. You can easily move the slicers around by clicking and dragging. And also you can resize them by dragging in and out the sides. Slicers can be also formatted using the slicer styles here, very similar to formatting the pivot table styles. Right-click and duplicate the style and make all the styling adjustments that you want. Now, using the slicers, you can filter for your P&L which month you want, which cost center, and you will see the pivot table or the P&L is updating automatically, as well as the variances and the conditional formatting. Everything is dynamic as the whole pivot table is changing to reflect your selection in the slicer. This concludes our video today on how to create a P&L with pivot tables and how to show the variances with visual indicators to make it easier for the readers of the P&L. Also, we know now how to insert slicers to filter the P&L to specific dates and cost centers. I hope you find that video to be useful. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos like these. Tell me what other topics you are interested in. If you want to learn more about pivot tables and how to create dynamic dashboards, I will add a link to my 6-hour course below. Check out also the free 30-minute course on Excel tables. I'm sure you will find it useful. See you in the next video. Salam.